shout out to all my conscious writers out there. It's your boy Ian, aka the Lit Professor, here today to drop the first episode of the Creative Muse Podcast, where you guys are going to be learning to smash your writer's block with publishing heart-centered works, manifesting a life as a full-time author, and learning to tap into a flow that will produce legendary works. And this is for struggling writers of all levels, because I've met so many writers who will never become great, who have more talent than anyone that I know have ever met, but they will remain in stagnation forever. And I'm sure maybe you're an author like that. I've been an author like that at times in my life, but there are certain methods and techniques that combine the logical side, the left side of our brain, and maybe more of the woo-woo creative side, or right side of our brain, that can get us out of this rut no matter what happens, no matter how deep of a depression. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, everybody. The writer's success system, which is a system. But let's get a little bit more into what the Creative Muse Podcast is and what it isn't. So, first of all, this show has nothing to do with productivity. And when I mean nothing, I mean absolutely nothing. Because it doesn't matter how many hacks and apps, productivity apps, and if you're using Evernote or OneNote or whatever system, note-taking system, or if you use Google Docs or Microsoft Word or Scrivener, none of that matters in the long run. What matters is if you're in the right mindset, if you're aligned with the work, because you might be a one-hit wonder. You may be able to use coffee and other Adderall and other drugs to motivate yourself to write this great book, even a couple, but eventually your health is going to decline and you're not going to be able to do that anymore. We're trying to create here a playful, trusting, and consistent relationship with your craft. And you might even say your reality. Because if you talk to a lot of writers, they have this mystique. There's this weird language and mystique around it, and it doesn't sound very playful. Isn't that what you want? If you had to name a couple of values or statements about what you want your writing to be, I would say I don't want it to be. This is why I see a lot of people do heart-wrenching, grind, writer's block, blocked, hard work. Wouldn't you rather create a character, a person that can have a playful, trusting, and consistent relationship with your craft, and then make all the money or get all the viewership or do whatever your end goal is? But do that in that way, because there are a ton of people who do it in that way. Why can't that be you? And that's one of the first pivot points that we get when we get stuck in the coffee trap, in the productivity trap, is that applies to them, that doesn't apply to you. That applies to you, but that doesn't apply to the character that you've currently sculpted. You're going to have to change a couple things before you are able to become that person. And so, bullet journals, like I've tried everything, and it works. And this stuff works. Let me say this. This stuff actually helps a lot when you are functioning at 100%, when all cylinders are firing and you can sit down and go through the writer's success system, which like I said, we'll get to in a second. Then all that stuff starts to work a little bit. Like, I have a whole course on the book, The Artist's Way, and all the techniques in that, and there'll be plenty more. And we'll even get into into this show a little bit. But I would like to provide solutions for everybody in this, because there are a lot of writers out there who I'm never going to convince to move out of the logical left brain, no matter what. And that's fine. And there's a lot of people who are right-brained who I'll never convince to move out of the ether or the magical side of the brain, no matter what happens. So I'm going to offer solutions that work for both types of people. And for logical people, there's this wild mind. And I think that, hopefully that we can learn to use both, because writers who don't use both eventually have problems. And it may be problems in the writing or problems in their personal life with addiction. But, and we could get into this, but like a David Foster Wallace, I think really relied on his logic. And he had these crazy books with endnotes, and just a very logical writer. Ended in suicide. I think John Ashbery, I think Ashbury, the poet. It's John Berryman. I'm messing it up. Excuse me. But he committed suicide. But also even though he has a book called Dream Songs, But, and then if you look at the other side, when people get too into the right brain, they start to go schizo too. Dostoevsky, Nietzsche. We have all these people that really got all, had the power within them, but they couldn't contain it. So talking about the logical side of the brain, though, there is a theory by Julian James in the book, The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicurial Mind. Right here, great book. Going to do a course on this very soon. That says that basically we were all schizophrenic at some point. And that's why people heard voices, and that's what attributes to gods and stuff. And eventually, as we came into civilization, we started moving into unified consciousness. And that the real power within us isn't, and there's still people stuck in that. People still hear voices and still see demons and all this stuff. But the reason that people don't want to move out of that is because then we have to accept that it's all within our own mind, that our own mind has all these different functions and can fire at an infinite, at an unimaginable rate. And it's hard to accept that, because to accept that, we have to give up a lot of superstitions and a lot of other things. And then it's all up to us. When we sit down to the desk, it's up to you. And if you're not doing it, then you haven't accessed your mind enough. So those synapses need the space and energy to fire. But we need to give that support if we're going to take that angle. Then the other angle, and then there's the wild mind. And everybody, this is a video presentation, and there's also an audio version out there on all podcast platforms. Should have said that at the start. And then there's the magical side, everybody. And I would describe this as, and I usually prefer this side a little bit more, especially when it comes to creative writing, when I'm really, doing nonfiction. Of course not. It's channeling into the ether and the collective unconscious. It's understanding that there is a chain of energy that starts somewhere and comes down to us. And if we can, like a Wi-Fi signal, if we can increase the signal, if we can move from dial-up to fiber optic and get the signal stronger, 3G to 5G, we can open ourselves up to that more. And so all that matters in the end is and we'll be discussing techniques for both of these, of course. And there we go. All that matters in the long run is our connection with flow. And it doesn't matter. We all have a purpose out here as authors, as creators, and this is for everybody. But it doesn't matter if you write 100 books or if you write 0 books. Do we judge Proust? Do we judge Franz Kafka or Emily Dickinson? People who their fame, Herman Melville, people whose fame was they never got to live out their fame, and some of them even never published books during their lifetime. Are we going to judge them for what they did? And maybe that's you. But the worst thing you can do if you're going to do that is not do anything. If you're going to die, at least die with 100 books and a benefactor that's going to try to push that stuff out there for you, right? And it doesn't matter how many books or how much money or whatever, get published. What matters is that you are in the flow, because that is going to bring a certain artistic therapy to your life. So let's go over the writing success system, which should be next. Boom, I laid this out, hopefully in a nice way for you guys. So this has 6 different stages, and these are monster. And we're going to be going over not just all of these. Each one of these is 100 podcast episodes deep. So stage number 1, and we're just going to go over, is spend time alone at your desk. You have to spend time alone at your desk, man. That is step number 1. If you can create a writing routine, even if you're not getting anything done, if you literally just go over here, if you just go and sit at your desk and write gibberish, sometimes I do that. Sometimes it takes me over 30 minutes to not be writing absolute gibberish. And I'll just start looking at stuff. Like I have like 14 different color pens if I'm really stuck, and I will take a pen and I'll start the first line of whatever I'm trying to write, poetry or prose, and use that pen, use the color of the pen in the sentence. So like the green wind launches off the mountains, to use a metaphor or whatever. And that helps me get into the flow. And then I keep going, and I'll write maybe a stanza if I'm doing poetry in that color. But then by the end, suddenly I'm back in the flow, and we are going to be talking about that. But the best way you can do it is just keep writing and writing and getting down into the chair. But I understand that is not easy. So once again, we are going to have techniques ad infinitum to make sure that you can get down in the desk, and a million little tricks, like if you're clicker training a dog or something and they're not responding. There's a million different avenues to hop through this. Then step number 2 is, living excuse me. That's in the wrong placement. Boom. Sorry. Right at the desk writing, everybody. Reading great books. And reading great books is stage number 2 if you want to go back and look. Stage number 2 is reading great books. And I can't emphasize how important this is. I actually have a video on the channel called Reading Deprivation where I get into, for people who overread, taking a week off from reading, but that's probably not you. If you're not reading, I'm just going to say this. If you're trying to be a great author, if you're trying to be a prolific creator, and you're not reading 100 books a year at least, then you can do good. Especially if you can be really good. Let me say that. But you're not going to be prolific. You're not going to be earth-shattering. You're not going to push it to the next level because you're going to be functioning in you land. You're not going to be seeing the axiomatic classics and then the experimental new books. You're not going to be able to piggyback off those people, and that's going to cause problems in the long run. A lot of people don't think they don't need to do that because they have talent as writers. But if you're trying to construct something, it's no coincidence. I mean, let's be honest. There's no coincidence that almost every great prolific author reads over 100 books a year. Why? Are you the one? Are you the exception? And that's what we're going to be trying to get out of this, is ask logical questions and say, do you think you're the exception? Okay, we'll see you in 10 years. Maybe 10 years from now, if you are, then we'll, but if not, maybe come back to stage number 2 or whatever stage. People think they're the exception in any of these stages. But I would say that this is the first complete, really system laid out for this. So reading great books, and get into that more later. And then, living... Wow, this is really out of order. Living a fulfilled life, everybody. And we'll just find the photos. Wow, books. Living a fulfilled life. Here I am, everybody. I'm out in the Tetons. Spend a lot of time in Wyoming every year. And, having fun at the beach in Oceanside, hanging out with my cats, skiing. Like, there's all these, and then social relationships. I mean, all the experiences you can have with all types of even mind-altering things, and with other people, and love and heartbreak and friendship and death, travel. Dude, it's endless. And a lot of writers stay too reclusive, in my opinion, and they don't get out of their ways. They don't see the world. And once again, look at your favorite authors. There are authors who are also very reclusive, but they also live a fulfilled life. Money, and it's even crazy, even the most reclusive, even like the people who live in one room, read a lot, and actually they think they're living a fulfilled life. A lot of people, that is an integral step to this process, because we want to make sure that you get all the words out of you. You need to be able to live a long and healthy life, because some authors' best works come out in their 70s and 80s. Let me repeat that. Some of the authors' best works, when we look back, come out in their 70s and their 80s. So, like, for me, I'm 28 right now. So you're telling me I have 50 years? I have 50 more years maybe of planning and practicing before I'm going to write my best work? That's insane. Dude, that's so much time to prep and prepare, and so many other books I can write. So step number 4 is spend time in nature. And I think this can be expanded to walking and spend alone time, really dedicating yourself to relaxing and decompressing. Because look at these first things. You're going to be in this room alone writing. Then you're going to be reading and probably working a job for a while. Then living this fulfilled life. And you're living in society, you're living in the world of right angles and input all the time. But when you go out to nature and maybe do a little bit of yoga or something, you decompress. Look, and that's why I love the desert. Look at where I live. What do you see out there? Do you see any buildings? No, man. Your body and your brain can decompress because there is no hierarchy out there. And when you're in the forest and you're forest bathing, it's so important to see the Canadian geese flying over you and hearing those sounds. And enough can't be said about that. But once again, it's important. And it's something that people don't spend enough time doing because a lot of writers also live in cities or they're a university professor. And the New York school and the Los Angeles and the San Francisco writers, they don't even have an opportunity to go out in nature. And I think, once again, over the long haul, you may be talented, but you can, like I said, you can write some really good stuff. But without all of these, you can't write good stuff, live a happy life, and live a fulfilling life with love and with, really awesome things. And then also discover for you the meaning of life. Why would you want to be? And that's like one of the problems and with a lot of people, man, is that with the writing community, is all just the aesthetic writers, man, all the MFA writers and all the people chasing fellowships and book deals and to get with the opposite gender or whatever, not with the opposite gender, would hook up with people, man. All the merits of, they think of becoming a writer, and maybe you're one of those people, and you're not going to get where you want to go if you stay in that mindset, man. This is about something bigger. This is about creating works that can change the world, creating works that people will remember for thousands of years because you put your heart and soul into it. And then stage number 5, everybody, is, I'm just going to stay on this page. Thank you. How's everybody doing? How am I doing? Let me know in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. If you're still listening, thank you for being here. Character sculpting. Character sculpting is basically just personal development. And I really surmount it to creating good habits and deleting negativity out of your life. Negative people, negative jobs, negative cities, negative, food. There's all these different things, and it's all about character sculpting. It's all about creating a person that you want to be, creating a stronger ego. Not the ego like that jerk from high school, but the ego of a strong, courageous, smart, creative character that you are playing in this simulation. What kind of character are you going to play other than when you're writing? And that is really important because how you feel really affects how you write. And that's why some writers are really good because they feel really bad, but why not feel good? Why not feel relaxed and caring and trusting and playful? All these different things. And this is going to be a huge section. This is infinite. An infinite amount of help for you guys because writers have a lot of problems and a lot of it comes down to character sculpting. And then stage 6, we already kind of talked about this, is just persistence. And for this, I'm just going to be laying out techniques to stay persistent and, almost benchmarks, how to create a lifestyle as a writer, how to, make it into a wholesome career. And there's a lot of, and you might be like, well, isn't this part of character sculpting? No, because there's a lot of problems. For instance, what if you have, like Gene Wolfe, for instance, a great author, I think had to work a normal job for 30 years. Toni Morrison, Octavia Butler worked jobs for decades and woke up and had families and would wake up at 4 a.m. or stay up and only get a couple hours of sleep every night to make their dream a reality. There's certain sacrifices that you may need to make. And if you keep going though for decades, you're going to reach your goal. And that's why the aesthetic writers aren't going to make it. Some people are going to get lucky and make a bunch of money or whatever, but everyone else, you will be successful if you keep this going for decades, no matter how untalented or how bad you suck right now. If you keep up the time, you keep up the effort, and you keep improving your craft, you can do it. So everybody, this is your boy Ian, laying down the first episode of the Creative Muse Podcast. I think that is all, and thank you guys for being here, and I am signing off. Peace.